Generally in modern day, if you get stepped on, you get stepped on, and boots with protection aren't really a thing, especially when there's people out there being like, oh, go and buy this Copa and saying it's got protection just because it's leather. It's not the case, and it's not how it works. However, Under Armour have just released these, which not only look fantastic, but they might actually have some elements that you could assign to a position, or at least a certain mentality of player. And they might offer you a bit of additional durability and protection. So, let's take a look. Are these worth buying? What do you need to know? And have they actually created a boot that does have some protection, durability, and maybe a position? So what we have here is the Under Armour Magnetico 5 Elite in this absolutely wonderful camo colorway. It's like a digi camo type print, and I think this is absolutely fantastic. This is one of my colorways of the year, no doubt. I absolutely adore it. However, colorway is not really important, that's all personal preference. So if you do want to buy them, what size do you need to go out and buy? I would get these in what I would consider to be my regular size, which for Under Armour is a US 8, UK 7, EU 41, 26 centimeter. Now what I do is I measure my foot. I have a 26 centimeter long foot. I correspond that to the 26 centimeter long Japanese sizing, and that gives me the correct size for me. Now do be aware we have a slightly lower toe box, so if that's not something that you enjoy, you might get away with going up half a size, but I wouldn't generally recommend it. But are they any good for wide feet? Let's talk about it. The short answer for are these any good for wide feet, for me, is unfortunately no. I don't think these are a great wide foot option. I have wide feet, and I do find that overall I'm feeling pretty squeezed. They're feeling pretty tight. That lower volume toe box I mentioned, just overall, I don't think this is a great wide foot option. If you have a narrow foot or just a regular width foot, I think these are an excellent choice, and there is an awful lot of softness in the upper, which is going to help you. But I would say if you have a distinctly wide foot, these are probably ones to avoid. The outsole, something that I really enjoy, but is it any good for FG and AG pitches? And this is another area where I would say no. Now this is marketed as FG only, and I think that is absolutely correct. So you do have all of these conical studs, which is absolutely fantastic, and I really do like the kind of multi-directional movement that you get off it. It's very stable underfoot, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. But the studs are also quite long, which on grass does lead to that feeling of additional stability, but on AG it's going to make you potentially have a little bit of pressure. So don't recommend for AG, but as a sole plate, it's actually a really solid, really kind of robust, stable, planted feeling with a good amount of stability through the midfoot and heel of the boot, a little bit of give which suits the whole boot all together, and a nice little bit of spring back through the forefoot where the boot seems to have a double bend because of this structured area here. Now the structure itself is doing an awful lot of the heavy lifting, but I don't really think there's anything wrong with that. So I do really like the outsole as a whole, but we do have to consider that it can feel maybe a little bit clunky, a little bit bulky. So if you're looking for something super streamlined and feeling super lightweight, this outsole isn't going to lead to that. But I also think that's not really the purpose of the boot. So if we get back around to my original point, is this a boot for a specific position with certain elements in mind? And I feel like a pretty sturdy outsole is one of these things that they've gone for deliberately. So let's talk about the two best things about the boot and how both of those are related to this idea of a boot for a position and a boot that would be slightly more durable or have more protection. Now, the position I'm talking about is essentially a defender. Now, I still absolutely do not abide boots by position. I don't think it's a thing. I think it's a whole bunch of marketing nonsense. However, what we can say here is this super soft upper has a good amount of substance to it. It's a little bit on the thicker side. It's going to give you a slightly more padded touch on the ball. And I also think it's going to give the right kind of person a little bit more confidence going into a challenge, because it's not a thin upper. If you get stood on wearing this, you are maybe less likely to feel some of that pressure because it's the upper, you've got a top coating on it, it's even got some additional texture which is supposed to help your touch and feel on the ball, even though it is just overall kind of padded as a feeling. But I think there is an element of potential confidence going into a challenge when it comes to the way this upper is designed. The upper itself, I think, is just generally very good, and then you tie that into the overall message of the boot, and maybe it does make sense. And then the other good thing, which is going to suit some people, if you start to think in that way of protection, durability, maybe, again, I hate boots by position, but somebody who's going to go into maybe a lot of challenges and wants to feel more confident because they feel like they have protection, even if it's just a placebo effect, we can talk about areas like the heel. So this is solid. If you feel like you're going to get kicked around the ankles a lot, this is quite impressive. So when you take the overall idea of maybe protection or feeling like you have more protection, and then you take the build of this with the more solid materials all the way around, the more solid feeling outsole, you're potentially in a position as well where you're feeling like you're going to get more durability out of the boot. So these can both be positive things and something that is a bit different from anything else that we get on the market, and different is always good if it is good, which generally it is, apart from a couple of problems. The first problem is actually the heel fit itself. Now, the heel here just makes you stand quite a long way off the back of the heel. The way that this is designed, you end up stood all the way back here with a good amount of space in behind you in the boot, and it just makes you overall feel a little bit more disconnected from the rear of the boot than I would like. It's absolutely not an ideal amount of space that's been created there. It doesn't kind of look great and it doesn't feel very seamless. The other issue actually also relates to the heel, and it is linked, because the reason you're pushed so far off is because of this padding here. And the way this padding is designed, along with this very solid internal heel counter, means that the heel as a whole is very hard, and it kind of clamps around your ankle, or around your Achilles I should say, and it just holds you in place, which is great, but it can be uncomfortable. I found really getting pinched around the back of the Achilles there, and that is something that I found very difficult to get over. So the space in the heel and then the clamping around the heel are definitely my two least favorite things. So definitely make sure you try these on if you can, to make sure that that works for you, if everything else that I've spoken about is speaking to what you want to know. So let's talk about competition. Who is the competition for this boot? Well, the Magnetico is kind of Under Armour's control boot, but they have moved into this space with this really padded, slightly elegant touch and feel on the ball, a really soft upper, but this substantial design with a substantial outsole and a solid heel, where they're kind of a bit of a niche product on their own. If you are looking for something that has all of those elements, there's not really another boot that does exactly what this does. So yes, maybe in the control boot kind of market, up against the Skechers SKX2, the Phantom 6, the Predator Elite, which is an absolutely stacked section of the market, but this does something that none of the rest of them do. So if anything I've spoken about with regards to durability, protection, etc. appeals to you, these could be worth considering. But do remember, they do have those couple of flaws, mainly in this area of the boot. I do like the rest of it quite a lot. Under Armour do have an upper that I think is also incredible on another boot that maybe needs an outsole update, and that is on the Shadow. So if you want to check out the Shadow and my review of that, click on that video right there.